I found these little Valentines at the thrift store for $2, and I think they're probably from the 80s because the way they're designed. First thing is I'm going to tear them apart. Hub sanded them for me, painted them a soft cream, and I was originally going to paint stripes on them, and then I found this gorgeous paper that I liked better, so I went with that. To add the paper, what we're going to do is we just take and trace it out onto the cardstock using our hearts. Then I'm going to take a pair of scissors and cut each one out on the inside of the line so it's a little bit smaller than the actual heart. So once you got the hearts cut out, you want to make sure that they're small enough that there's a little tiny border all around the outside of the heart so you can see the wood. So size it up and then keep cutting until you get just a little edge all around your Valentine to give it that little border that you see there. Once I had them all done, there's a YouTuber I like called Linda's DIY by Design. And she always takes paper, when she's adding paper to things, she scruffs it up using a scissor like this. So I decided I wanted to do that on these Valentines. You just take a pair of scissors and you scruff it up along the edge, and it gives it that little bit of extra texture you see there. Now I'll go ahead and I'm going to show you, there's a couple of the green ones, and I'll show you one of the white ones, or the grayish white ones, so you can see that it makes a difference on them as well. It's very subtle, but you can see it. I did that for a total of 7 of them, one for each of the hearts. Once we got that done, it was time to apply it to the wood backgrounds, and I just used craft glue and a paintbrush, but you can use Mod Podge if you like. Then I used a roller, but you can use an alligator clip if you like to make it as smooth and flat, and make sure it had no air bubbles. And here I'm showing you, see those little holes? If your paper happens to cover them, don't fret. I got to fix that at the end anyway. Then I had to go in my stash and see what I had that I could make lots of little strips out of. I found this beautiful, the last 18 inches of this ribbon that I love. I cut it up, and then I found some muslin in my sewing stash, and I made ripped and teared 3 or 4 strips of it. And then a very little bit of lace because I was a little bit hesitant to hack at this. I think it was $1.99 for a bundle, and I gave it, I think, used about a foot of it. And I cut it up into 3 lengths. Then I had some raffia and some thin white ribbon to use for the bows on the hearts. So once I decided on all the different ribbons and etc. I was going to use, I started with the raffia, and I put them on the angle like that because I thought it emphasized the shape of the heart. And I just glued it at the back with hot glue, wrapped it around the front about 5 times, and made sure that I attached it at the back again and did not put any glue whatsoever on the front of my hearts. I was smart enough this time to finally get out my finger protector. I did a total of 7 of them. Again, like the paper, don't worry too much about the little holes there. If one does cover it, you can just poke it with a needle. We'll poke them all through a needle at the end and make sure that it's good. I did all 7 of them exactly the same way. So once you got the raffia on, or wrapped around, I went next and I started to put the ribbons on each of the Valentines. Now, I made them each a little bit different, not in their placement so much as in different ones had different strings. And then some of them you'll see I tied a ribbon with the lace, other ones I tied it with the raffia and so forth. I wanted them to be similar but not identical because to me identical would look too commercial. Now that we've got the raffia and the ribbons on all of them, it's time to get to the fun part, which is decorating them each individually. You're going to see the next part's a bit choppy because I started and stopped so that I didn't use up too much of your time while I dug around and found what piece I wanted to use. On the back side of the gray paper, I had some little dragonflies and some big dragonflies, and I cut them out of my scrap paper because I thought they were beautiful. And on this one, I've decided to glue it over top of a button to give it some height. And then I had the hardest time with these white flowers. You can see how it's kind of meshed in there and unusable. I did find a few of them that I was able to tear apart, but these things were my nemesis, I'm telling you. Anyway, I cut off little bits. When I got it the way I liked it, I just glued it to my Valentine there. And that's how I went with it on this one. Just give it a little bit of something. On this one, I had the raffia, I had the ribbons, put a few buttons on, and then I decided to just put a simple muslin bow over top. And then you can see me fiddling with it here because it was a bit larger to get it just right. Then I folded the ends over and I glued them in place so that they stayed exactly where I wanted them, one on each side. On this particular Valentine, I was a little indecisive about which flower I wanted to use. I eventually put the green one aside for one of the white Valentines, and I stuck just some green leaves that I had in my stash and the little white flower on that one. Then I decided it looked a little bare, so I went back with my nemesis flowers again and I trimmed them off and got a little tiny bit and I stuck that underneath the flower just to give it something a little bit extra. And that's that one done. So now we're on to the gray ones, and there's only 3 of them. And I have cut out some of the extra dragonflies to use because I think they're beautiful. And then here I'm putting together a bundle of ribbon, of course, but I wanted them to have a little more green than the ones that I had used on the green Valentines. So here I'm putting them on and I'm trying to place it and I'm going to glue it so that it doesn't cover that dragonfly too much because I really want them to show. I think they're beautiful. Again, you'll see some strings and stuff hanging out. We'll go ahead and trim them later. But I think I found 3 or 4 of these dark green buttons, so I put them on there. Here's our next one. This time instead of using green ribbon, I just decided to use lace for a bow, for a little something extra on this one. And then I dug around and you see these often in the Dollar Tree. They're, especially in the springtime, they're like a little branch. It's got these little beads on it. Well, if you pull the beads off, you pull them off two at a time, and I just stuck some of them in the ribbon here to give it a little bit of something extra again. Here I'm taking one of the dragonflies that I cut out, folding it in half. I'm going to glue it on top of the one that's part of the background. And I'm going to try to make it as 3D as I can. I was just playing around, working with what I have. There you see me trimming off some threads. And that's how I finished that one. Here's the next one. This one here, you can really see that I'm going to have a lot of threads to cut off because I really don't like how messy it is. And that again is a cutout from one of the pieces of scrap paper. I'm giving it a couple of those little beads, one on each side. I should have probably glued them before the heart, but I hadn't thought about it in time. I sped this part of the video up a bit here. All I'm doing right here is I'm making sure that all the holes for the hanging twine are open so that we can fit the twine through without any problem. Some of them were fine, some of them were not. What you do is you start from the back and carefully poke through to the front, being cautious that you don't lift up your paper. Once you got at least a little hole, you can start from the front and push towards the back and twist it around to make the hole nice and large. You can see how large the hole is there. Now I started with the twine, and starting from the very front, I went from the front, pushed it through, and then tied a large knot to make sure that the twine couldn't pull through. Okay, and now I'm going to just thread them starting from the front, going across the back and up to the front of the next one. Then I'm going to take it, pull it through. See that? So that it goes across the back. Then the next one again, I'm going to take a white one and I'm going to start from the front on the one side. Flip it over, make sure that it's neat and tidy across the back. And pull it through the back side. Okay, and I'm going to do this for all of them. Make sure before you start, I made a mistake measuring mine and they ended up being way too long. You'll see that later. But it's better to make your twine too long than not long enough. So have some idea of where you want to hang your Valentine, and before you go ahead and string it. Mine, I ended up giving it 7 feet of twine before I hung mine up. Here I am at the other end, and I'm giving a final nice big fat knot so it can't pull through. We've only got 2 steps left here and we'll be all done. Okay, so once I was done all that, what I did was I went through and I kind of just sent the hearts so that they were all about 2 to 3 inches apart. And I shuffled them around, being fully aware that I'd have to shuffle them around again once I put them up on the hanger. But this I gave me enough room at the end. I made sure I had enough room at each end to tie these final knots. And the first time I did it, I messed it up. But the second time I did it, I managed to do it within the camera frame. So what I want you to do is you're going to make like a U shape with the big knot. Take a bundle of your threads of your pretty ribbons again, whatever you choose. Tie a knot around just a knot ribbons, bundles, just like we did for the Valentines. Tie it around like that, you see, and pull it really, really tight. What that does is it gives you a loop on one side that you can lengthen or make it smaller. See, you can adjust it. You can move your thread. You can make the loop bigger or smaller. And you do the exact same thing on the other end. And with that, we're ready to go hang up our Valentine and our little Valentine banner. Now I've got it hanging up on my hoser where I'm going to keep it. It's the end of my dining room. And as you can see, it's by far too long. So those 2 hoops came in handy for me. What I did is I pulled on the knot, made the loop bigger, then made it shorter, and shoved everything over. I wanted the one that's in my hand right there to be in the middle. And then I just adjusted them. I still have the ribbons to do. Right now I'm just figuring out the placement. And now I'm going to lift it up on the other side. You can see me there pulling it short on one time to shorten it, and then pulling the long knot out to tighten it again. Now, I didn't like the way it was originally because it was kind of tangling up with the knobs there. So I went ahead and I did the whole process again. So once I got them all hung up to the right height, the way I like them, and saw that they were kind of separated the same length and everything, then I went and started to fiddle around with the ribbons. You can see some are much larger than others or longer than others, and I went through and quickly cut them all to give or take about the same. I wasn't really worried about them being perfect. I just didn't want some much longer than the rest. You can see me, I really didn't take a lot of time with it. Okay, just hack them off. And then what I find is sometimes, especially with raffia, you're going to find some of them, if you look right here on the end, I think I pointed out to you, there was one piece, there it is, it drove me crazy, because see how it's all twisted? And there's another piece over there. And what I like to do for that is I use a old hair straightener. And they work pretty slick. You can also use a curling iron if you want. And I just straightened it out. And then I used my straightener again to give it a little bit of a curl. And I don't show you me going through the entire banner, but I did. Okay, just because I'm fussy. Okay, and I twisted all of the different, see how much better that looks? And then I got the other one there. You're going to see me do that. I straighten it first, and then I give it a little curl. Then I go through the rest and I straighten them and fiddle with them and make them the way I like them. And I'm in there, you can see me cutting off some extra threads. I'm just doing the final touches on it. And with that, we have our little Valentine banner finished. I ended up making the whole thing cost me $9. If I use the whole package of paper, if I would have just bought one piece of paper, it would have cost me about $3 to do this. But even for $9 and having the extra 12 or 15 pieces of paper left, I think is a pretty good deal. I think it looks really nice. Anyway, happy crafting, everybody. And happy Valentine's Day. This is my last Valentine's project for this year.